A corporation is an organization, usually a group of people or a company, that acts as a single entity and is recognized as such by law. One of the main advantages of forming a corporation is the concept of limited liability. Limited liability means that anyone that owns a share or percentage of the corporation will only risk their share of investment. Corporations are generally run by a board of directors. Another advantage of the corporation is the influx of more capital. More people equals more money. With the growth of corporations came the introduction of new management techniques, which included a hierarchy of control. This hierarchy created what we know today as the middle manager, someone who controls the employees but answers to upper management, like a CEO. These modern corporations delegated tasks like accounting and marketing to specific departments to handle. Scottish-born Andrew Carnegie was an American industrialist who amassed a fortune in the steel industry, then became a major philanthropist. Carnegie worked in a Pittsburgh cotton factory as a boy before rising to the position of division superintendent of the Pennsylvania Railroad in 1859. While working for the railroad, he invested in various ventures, including iron and oil companies, and made his first fortune by the time he was in his early 30s. In the early 1870s, he entered the steel business, and over the next 2 decades became a dominant force in the industry. In 1901, he sold the Carnegie Steel Company to banker J.P. Morgan for $480 million. Carnegie then devoted himself to philanthropy, eventually giving away more than $350 million.
John D. Rockefeller, founder of the Standard Oil Company, became one of the world's wealthiest men and a major philanthropist. Born into modest circumstances in upstate New York, he entered the then fledgling oil business in 1863 by investing in a Cleveland, Ohio refinery. In 1870, he established Standard Oil, which by the early 1880s controlled over 90% of U.S. refineries and pipelines. Critics accused Rockefeller of engaging in unethical practices, such as predatory pricing and colluding with railroads to eliminate his competitors in order to gain a monopoly in the industry. Ida Tarbell wrote about Rockefeller in her book, The History of Standard Oil. Her research and information on his business practices led to the breakup of the trust. In 1911, the U.S. Supreme Court found Standard Oil in violation of antitrust laws and ordered it to dissolve. During his life, Rockefeller donated more than $500 million to various philanthropic causes. Established by John D. Rockefeller in 1870, the Standard Oil Company was the largest oil refiner in the world during the Gilded Age. Standard Oil dominated the oil products market through horizontal integration and refining, then vertical integration. It was one of the first to develop a business trust. It streamlined production and logistics, lowered costs, and undercut competitors. Rockefeller would become the richest man in modern history. In 1911, Standard Oil would be broken up by the Sherman Antitrust Act into 34 companies, some of which evolved over time into Chevron, ExxonMobil, BP, and Marathon. One of the most powerful bankers of his era, J.P. Morgan, financed railroads and helped organize U.S. Steel, General Electric, and other major corporations. The Connecticut native followed his wealthy father into the banking business in the late 1850s, and in 1871 formed a partnership with Philadelphia banker Anthony Drexel. In 1895, their firm was reorganized as J.P. Morgan and Company, a predecessor of the modern-day financial giant J.P. Morgan Chase. Morgan used his influence to help stabilize American financial markets during several economic crises, including the Panic of 1907. However, he faced criticism that he had too much power and was accused of manipulating the nation's financial system for his own gain. The Gilded Age Titan spent a significant portion of his wealth amassing a vast art collection. The goal of every robber baron in the Gilded Age was to eliminate the competition. They used several methods to accomplish this. Number one is rebates. Business would provide a partial refund back to the buyer as an incentive to purchase from that company. Businesses would undercut their competition by offering these rebates, even if their prices were higher. Number two is drawbacks. Businesses could offer a rebate on tariffs their customers paid on goods imported into the U.S., another incentive to lower the overall price of the goods. Number three is predatory pricing. Some big businesses sought to eliminate their competition by pricing their goods so low their competitors couldn't match it. This would destroy their business and help contribute to a monopoly. Number four is called a blind tiger. These were secret trusts created by big business to try and to force out their competition. Similar to a secret alliance, businesses would form a pact, force out the competition by lowering prices, etc. Then the secret trust could be dissolved at any time. Finally, you have differential freight rates. Railroad companies charge different customers different prices to try and eliminate their competition in each region. If they had a competitor in Texas, for example, they could lower rates to force a competitor who can't afford to charge lower rates out of business. These practices were very common and helped fuel the climate of mergers and acquisitions that led to many companies reaching near monopoly status in the Gilded Age. Two additional methods for obtaining a monopoly were vertical and horizontal integration. John D. Rockefeller used horizontal integration to gain control of the oil industry. That means he only controlled the oil refining process. At his peak, Standard Oil controlled over 95% of the oil production in the U.S. Another robber baron was Andrew Carnegie. His business, the Carnegie Steel Company, revolutionized steel production in the United States. Carnegie built plants around the country using technology and methods that made manufacturing steel easier, faster, and more productive. For every step of the process, he owned exactly what he needed: the raw materials, shipping and railroads for transporting the goods, and even coal fields to fuel the steel furnaces. He owned the plants to process the iron ore into steel. He then used those same ships and railroads to get his finished products to the buyers. This start-to-finish strategy was called vertical integration. It helped Carnegie become the dominant force in the industry and an exceedingly wealthy man. A merger is the combining of two or more companies to create one larger company. After the Panic of 1893, mergers became more and more common. Many companies found it advantageous to merge and reduce their costs and increase efficiency. The peak of this merger movement can be seen in the graph in 1899, when over 1,200 mergers took place. The federal government will move to break up these mergers in the early 20th century using the Sherman Antitrust Act. Industrialists saw consolidation as a way to cope with competition. They believed competition led to instability and economic problems. They found new ways to combine and eliminate competition. Number one are called pools. These are informal agreements between multiple companies, usually railroads, to stabilize prices and divide up markets. They use drawbacks, rebates, and differential freight rates to eliminate their competition. These are also known as cartels and would later become illegal. They did not work very well because some companies would refuse to cooperate, causing it to fall apart. Number two are trusts. Pioneered by Standard Oil and perfected by J.P. Morgan, a trust was a type of organization. In a trust, stockholders from individual corporations would transfer their stock to a small group of trustees in exchange for shares of stock in the trust. The trustees would control the trust, and the stockholders would receive a share of the profits of the new combined trust. In other words, a trust is a large corporation made up of smaller corporations run by a small group of people. Number three is a holding company. This is a parent corporation that owns enough voting stock in another corporation to control its board of directors, and therefore control its policies and management. Finally, you have an interlocking directorate. J.P. Morgan used this device to eliminate wasteful competition. He consolidated rival enterprises and to ensure future harmony by placing officers of his own banking syndicate. Adam Smith was a British social philosopher and political economist best known for his book, The Wealth of Nations. His belief is that every person looks out for themselves and therefore helps create the best economic outcome for all. The market, or supply and demand, guides the economy and pushes it to be successful. The government should not interfere in this process, as any economic downturn will correct itself. Herbert Spencer was another British philosopher. He was famous for his theory of social Darwinism, where he believed that competition was the driving force of capitalism, that the strongest companies should survive and the weakest ones should die out. He opposed all social programs, as he believed that the theory of evolution applied also to society. William Sumner was an American social scientist from New Jersey who taught social sciences at Yale University. He was an avid supporter of laissez-faire economics, free market, and competition. Like Spencer, he felt that the weak companies should die out. Horatio Alger was an American writer of the late 19th century. His novels focused on young adult males from impoverished backgrounds, rising to middle-class security and comfort. Known as Rags to Riches, these books emphasized individualism and hard work to achieve success and wealth. Originally titled simply Wealth and published in the North American Review in June of 1889, Andrew Carnegie's essay, The Gospel of Wealth, is considered a foundational document in the field of philanthropy. It describes the responsibility of philanthropy by the new upper class of self-made rich Americans. He proposed the best way of dealing with the wealth inequality was to use their extra wealth in a responsible and thoughtful way, by giving back to society and making it better. Russell H. Conwell was another Gilded Age philosopher who had strong ideas about wealth and poverty. In his book, Acres of Diamonds, Conwell enumerates that wealth should be looked at as a positive and not a negative. Wealth should be seen as a sign of God's approval. He adds that it is our duty as Christians to accumulate as much wealth as possible, and that helping the poor should not be a priority. Henry George was an American political economist and journalist. He believed that the people should own the value they produce themselves, and the value derived from the land should belong to all members of society. He argued that a single tax on land would create a more productive, more just society. This is known as the single tax on the unearned increment. It focused on the increased value of land just because of its location. The owner did nothing to create new wealth. It showed the effects of laissez-faire policies, the growing inequalities in wealth caused by industrialization.